In this episode, I talk about what surfing means to me. It's a challenge on many different levels. Most importantly, it is teaching me what the real challenge is in my relationship to the ocean, control, and lessons still to learn. Here are some random thoughts inspired by surfing. So we've reached the end of 2025 in the final days, and this is episode 125. I wasn't going to do another episode myself so soon, but I decided that the timing just felt right and the numbers seemed auspicious, so I'm just going to run with it. And the title of this episode is Surf Woman, and I'll explain why. Sometimes I'm not sure after 124 episodes preceding this one how much I've shared about different things that I'm doing or trying, and surfing is one of them. Surfing was one of the two big new things I've tried in 2025. The other was learning to play the bass. But surfing has been an incredible learning experience for me, and I'm still trying to figure out what many of the lessons mean and how I can carry them forward. So I'll take a step back. It's December 30th, and it is so cold here. I'm in Montreal. It's minus 17. The wind is cruel and biting. And I walked out this morning to get my tea, which is something I just really enjoy doing and embracing bracing into the wind and pushing through the wind and forcing myself to walk out in the cold. And it made me think about surfing and, why I started surfing and what it brings to me. So there's a few different stories I want to share about surfing from this year. I started in May. I went to visit my family. I have family in California. I went to visit and I decided that I wanted to take surf lessons with my niece, that it would be something that we could do together. My son also surfs, and so I just sort of had an idea in my head that if I could get at least halfway safe and reasonable out on waves, it's something that I could do with them and we could take trips or, experience that together. So I went and I took a few lessons on my own first. And then because my niece is actually really good. And so we had to make sure I was ocean safe. And then I took lessons with her, and it was incredible. I enjoyed it. Actually, my favorite part was sitting out on the surfboard, waiting for the waves to come or the right waves to come, and staring out into the ocean, and was so lucky on one of those days to see a dolphin family, 3 dolphins, a baby dolphin at the end, just swimming along the horizon, which was an incredible experience. So I have to admit, my one of my favorite things about surfing is probably not even the surfing. It's being out on the ocean. And part of the reason for that is because I'm actually scared in the ocean, not of creatures and things like that, but of being underwater. And I just don't have any experience really in the ocean. I grew up in lakes, and I can swim underwater, but you have a lot more control in a lake. And in the ocean, I realized, and I don't know why I didn't know this when I first started surfing, but surfing is as much about being kind of under the water and in the water as it is being on the water. And you don't have control when you fall. And I had a conversation with a couple of surfers where I said, they were saying, we don't understand people who like to fall on the ground. It's way easier to fall in the ocean because it doesn't hurt. And I said, oh, no. I would way rather fall on the land because I stop and I can breathe. And when I fall in the ocean, I can't breathe. I don't know which way is up. And I panic. I get really scared. I had to ask myself, what is the reason you want to take up surfing? Because it scares you. And so is this kind of like a challenge? Are you trying to face your fears and go out in the ocean and fall into the water and not breathe and be scared, but know that you did it and you sort of, overcame those fears, if that's even really possible. The other story I wanted to share was I went I took lessons with a woman named Heather who has a company called Soul Surf Sessions, and highly recommend if you're in the area in Los Angeles or south of Los Angeles to look her up if you want to try surfing. She's a great teacher. And I decided that I wanted to do more. And so she does trips, surf trips to Hawaii and to Costa Rica. And I thought, well, I think I'd really like to visit Costa Rica. And I'm really fortunate. I consider myself extremely lucky. I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to arrange that. And at the beginning of December, I went for a week to Costa Rica to continue learning how to surf. And that was an incredible experience, very magical, all of its own. But there's a specific story that kind of amazed me, that the very first morning we went down to the surf shop, Agua Tibia surf shop, so that we could take our boards. Every day we would go down, pick up our boards, surf for an hour and a half, come back, leave the boards at the shop, come back a few hours later, surf again for an hour and a half or so, and bring the boards back. So we were going regularly to the surf shop. But the very first morning, we went to the surf shop and had to sign the contracts for renting the boards. And I was with my surf buddy, my new surf buddy, Heidi, who I was so happy to meet. She's fantastic, also from LA. A wonderful person, very supportive and kind. I was really lucky to be able to share a surf trip with her. So she's working on her contract, reviewing the contract, signing her contract, and I just started looking at whatever else was in the surf shop. And on the counter, there was a pile of books, and so I went straight to the books. And they were copies of a book called Nature of Surf Women. And beautiful, like really, really stunning book of photographs and stories of women who surf in Nosara in Costa Rica, where I was. And it was written by a woman named Ivana Bajic. I hope I pronounced that even half correctly. She did the writing, and then the photographer is Gabriela Tellez. So the cover art for this episode, I took the photo of me holding the book open to a page, which is a photograph of Haley's hand, but it was taken by Gabriela. And then the third contributor to the book is Martyn Stewart, who recorded interviews, short interview clips with the women in the book, featured in the book, and then mixed it with ambient sound of the jungle and the ocean. And so it's really beautiful. So it's a sort of a multi-sensory experience, this book. Beautiful photographs, the stories of the women, and then you can access through QR codes these interviews with the background sounds of nature. And it's exquisite. So saw the book, thought the book was absolutely beautiful, and I made up my mind that probably I would pick it up at the end of the trip. I would come back and pick it up so I could take it home as a memento of the trip. And so we get our boards and we're walking down to the ocean for our first lesson. And I turned to the other two, Heidi and the teacher, and said, "Did you see that beautiful book of photographs of women who surf right here in Nosara?" And the teacher, Heather, says, "Oh, yeah, no, I know that book. I've met the author, Ivana. 2 years ago, I met her at a film festival in LA, and she was sharing the book, talking about the book. So I actually bought the book and a couple of other books. But I have that book. It's beautiful." I said, "Oh, it's absolutely stunning. I would really like, I think I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it before I leave." That's great. Okay, great. That night, the same day, we go for dinner, and we're sitting in a restaurant overlooking the ocean on sand. It was absolutely stunning. And one of the things that I noticed anyway about Nosara is so many of the beautiful places are accessible to everybody. So it wasn't, a super fancy hotel that had kind of staked out their ground on this beautiful stretch just above the beach, but it was, a lovely restaurant. And so we were sitting there, the sun is setting, we're enjoying a wonderful dinner, and Heather, the surf teacher, looks up and she said, "Oh," and she points to the table just across the sand from us, and she says, "That's Ivana right there." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Yeah, the woman who did the book. That's her." And I was like, no way. That is so crazy that I saw the book this morning. you mentioned you met her 2 years ago in LA, and now here we are in Nosara, and there she's just sitting at the table, like across the sand from us. That's nuts. So Heather gets up and talks to Ivana, and so I'm chatting with Heidi. We're eating our dinner. And Heather and Ivana come walking back over to our table. And I was like, oh, this is, I mean, like, how much of a fluke is that she would be here? And so I'm going to ask her, I'm going to tell her that I'm going to buy the book. I'm going to ask her if she would please sign it for me. Because that would just be so, it would just be so meaningful to have a chance to meet the person that created the book. And so she came and she sat down and she's talking with us, and she looks at me and Heidi and she says, I wish you big waves tomorrow. I'm sure there's going to be big waves. And I must have turned white. Like, as soon as she said big waves, I was like, I think I probably said, oh, no, that's okay. We don't need really big waves. I'm good with like small waves. Because at this point, I'm still surfing on the inside, which is once the waves have crashed and it makes the white water and you can just ride that into shore. That's where I'm at. And Heidi goes out back. And so that's when you sort of get over the waves so that you get past them before they're crashing so that you can actually ride unbroken waves. I might have ridden one or two unbroken waves while I was in Costa Rica. But I'm riding on the inside. So I must have looked terrified. And Ivana just looked at me and she's like, but like, I can't remember the words she used, but it was kind of like, this is what it's all about. Like, get out there and risk it and be brave. And I thought, wow, okay, I'm going to have to try to think about how I'm going to do that because I'm really not very good yet. And I'm still really, really scared. But here's this like super high energy, powerful woman telling me to be brave. And so I thought, okay, I can do this. And then I said, I'm going to buy the book, and I just would be so touched if you would sign it. And she said, no, you're not buying the book. She said, I am going to get you the book, and I am going to sign it, and I'm going to bring it to you. I was like, wow, no, you don't have to do that. That's so generous of you, but no. She's like, no, I insist. And I said, okay, that's incredibly generous of you. Thank you. So we arranged for her to come bring the book a couple of days later. I'm just going to read what she wrote because it's perfect. She wrote, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. And I thought that's just perfect. I need to really think about what surfing is to me, what it means to me, or what I'm trying to get from it. But that is just perfect. And in her introduction to the book, I just want to read the one line about how waves challenge surfers to push beyond their limits. And so I think that's the part that I really want to take a moment to reflect on, because there's something, I think for myself, and I don't know if other people can relate to this, I would say for myself, there's a lesson that I've been trying to learn, I think or have I been trying to learn it? There's a lesson that's been landing on my head over and over and over again for the past few years. And I think it's what it means to challenge oneself. And so there's a part of that is do the things that scare you. But there's also a part of it that is be open to the thing you might be trying not to see. And in surfing, my biggest lesson from surfing is actually that you're not in control. You're riding the ocean. I had no idea, when it's not just like this set of waves that's regularly coming in kind of parallel to the beach. There can be 2 or 3 waves all going in different directions, and then the current under is going in another direction. And so there are these swells coming, and then the waves, and then the current, all these things are happening. And I can't read them. The teacher could read them, but I have no idea. So when the wave is coming, I don't know where it's going to go. And so you got to feel it. You have to let the wave take you in the direction it wants to go. And I think that is the number one thing I didn't understand about surfing. Because when I watch people, if you watch pro surfers and they're kind of like bouncing up and down the line and going in and out, they are, choosing their path through the waves, it appears. But I think probably they're not even. Are moving in they are moving in response to what the water is doing. The water is in charge. And so the lesson I had to keep coming back to, and it speaks, I think, to what I was saying in the very beginning about being scared in the water, it's because it's in control and you're not. And so the real challenge for me is to allow the waves to carry me and go in that direction, at the same time doing everything I can to get up and ride the wave. But I don't always get to choose the direction I'm going in. And I think that is the number one lesson of 2025 for me. As much as I'm quite strong, as much as I fought my way up onto the board to stand probably more times than I should have, because I was still fighting the waves. I would fight to get up. I was like, literally, I would grit my teeth and say, I am just nothing else. I'm standing on this board. And I got up. I got up quite a bit on that white water, the broken water, by the end of the trip. But in fact, the best rides were the ones where on some level, I fought, but I fought with the water and not against the water. And so that's the lesson I'm going to take away for this year. And I really am going to try to integrate better instead of fighting against the current all the time, is to fight with the current. As always, I invite you to share any thoughts or responses you might have to this. It was a little bit of a stream of consciousness, as these episodes sometimes are. So I really appreciate you listening. And I'm going to share all the information about the book in the notes so that if you're interested, you can check out the book. And also, Ivana has a podcast, also called Nature of Surf Women, where she speaks with women about their relationship to surfing and to the ocean. And there are some wonderful conversations. I highly recommend it. Thank you.